For the love of God and all that is good, can you differentiate between the fact that we don't make laws that control the federal government? My God, what are we doing here? I'm not a lawyer. I was an English teacher and I comprehend that. My 5th grade middle school English students would understand it. I am coming to you not from a point of ideology, because I know in the minority party, we already lost that argument. You guys are way, way out in the ether with that. I'm not even hoping to win the ideology. I'm hoping to win the logical argument to say, why do we keep passing laws that are going to end up in court? We lose and the taxpayer gets shafted over and over and over. You cannot vote yes for a law that controls local, county, state, and federal. No, federal's got to come off for this to count. But the only reason why you're passing it is to affect federal agents. Hello? Lights on, no one's home. I'm not an attorney. I need a freaking honorary degree after going through this for 4 hours yesterday saying, what don't a room full of lawyers understand? Ludicrous. Oh my goodness, thank you.
The New Jersey Statehouse Watch is on. From Trenton, we explain what's happening inside the State House, speaking directly with legislators, policymakers, and budget experts to bring you the facts behind the decisions.
There's no doubt that energy bills are about to skyrocket this summer.
$300 million to Newark billionaires. That ain't cutting it for rural New Jersey. Enough of it.
Madam Clerk, please have a machine for a vote.
46 votes in the affirmative, 25 in the negative, and 0 abstention.
We break down bills as they move through the New Jersey legislature before they become law. With your hosts, Jack Brangan and Constance Ditzel. So stick around. Here's Jack and Connie.
Hello. Indeed, this is Jack and Connie. Hello from Camden County, New Jersey. That clip was Assemblywoman Dawn Fantasia, our powerhouse Assemblywoman, hammering the point that New Jersey sanctuary state bills cannot completely prevent ICE from doing their job. You're going to be hearing more from her, but I think that was a great opening clip.
Yeah. So we are New Jersey Statehouse Watch, and our focus for every one of our podcasts is going to be Trenton. Everything that's going through, any of the bills going through Trenton that affect anyone in the state, we're going to try to keep track of. Now, this evening, we have 3 topics, in addition to Dawn Fantasia coming on. What we're going to be talking about with Dawn is our sanctuary state. That was one of the big changes. As soon as Mikey Sherrill was sworn in, we within a matter of days, we were a sanctuary state, and there were 4 bills, when you add them all up, equal New Jersey as a sanctuary state. So we're going to briefly define those bills and try to also define what the impact of those bills have on you as a citizen of the state. Another hot topic is the school funding.
Really hot right now.
Yes. So we're gonna cover that, and then the third one is the freedom to read. This is a bill that's already passed into law, but we want to remind folks that there are steps that you can take to protect your children against what we would consider pornographic materials that may be in your school library. So we had a little bit of action with sanctuary states right here in Camden County.
Yes, we did. Let's see that, Mr. Producer. We have something to show you. We had a Facebook post from our director, Louis Capelli Jr. in Camden County. This is dated April 16th, very current. And this just goes to show you how quickly bad ideas can move. He has cited that we've seen devastation wrought by the Immigration Customs Enforcement, and that right here in Camden County, ICE has torn families apart. And as such, until cult leader and traitor Donald Trump brings reform to this agency, ICE agents are not permitted in Camden County property without a judicial warrant. This relates directly to what Dawn is talking about.
Right.
That was enacted on March 25th. Here we are on April 16th. He's putting it in motion. And I think he even said in his follow-up that, could they do it? He didn't really answer. He knows that they can't actually enforce it. But they're going to take the time, and it costs time and energy and taxpayer dollars to try to defend it. But it's really something that they call this cult leader and traitor, and brings disdain to all of us who are trying to follow the president and follow the law here. That disdains half of the people in Camden County.
Yeah. So this is Camden County, but this should be a heads up to everyone in all counties that your county commissioners will be adopting the sanctuary state. Now, in this particular case with Lou Capelli, he never mentioned anything about whether there would be a public risk with this enacting these laws. He didn't mention anything about a medical risk because the illegal aliens that come into the state of New Jersey are not criminally or medically vetted. So he didn't mention that. He didn't mention anything about the potential impact on schools, or since New Jersey is now a sanctuary state, we will become a magnet, for illegal aliens all over the country.
Absolutely.
And
I think we're the only complete state that is a sanctuary state.
Yeah.
As an entire state.
Right.
And he also said a great line, a sad one, "Make America white again," a very racist statement.
Right. So
That's the intent here.
yeah, they will put the video on. But as I said, this is happening here to us in Camden County. This is a man overwhelmed with Trump disorder syndrome because the entire statement that he put on Facebook and his entire statement that he read verbally was simply about Trump.
Right. I know.
And this is not about Trump. And frankly, I don't care what he thinks about Trump.
And this is a commissioner meeting, a
Right.
Camden County commissioner meeting. So anyway, I think it's time we want to bring on Dawn Fantasia.
Well,
Shall we?
he did mention, I want to point this out. He mentioned about an incident in Lindenwold,
Oh,
New
right.
Jersey.
Right.
And actually, this might have made, I don't know if it made national news, it might have. But he mentioned a situation in Lindenwold, New Jersey, and the way he described it was the ICE agents were terrorizing children, that were near an elementary school. So what's the rest of the story, as they say? This was about an illegal alien named Hugo Coelho, who happened to be in the United States illegally for 21 years. So this was a targeted effort by ICE. They had this guy, they were following him in his car, and he took off down the street trying to evade ICE. He eventually got into a traffic jam that involved a school bus. So he jumped out of his car and he started running into a bunch of kids. So ICE followed him, and once they saw the kids, they stopped. This guy got off. So he is now
At
free.
large.
He's at large in Camden County. Now, he has not only been in here for 21 years, but he has a criminal history that includes assault, strangulation, aggravated assault, and theft. So he is free now to continue his life of assaulting people, strangulating people, and ICE now has to fight him or find him. They have, and they're going to get no cooperation.
Without the help of the New Jersey law enforcement.
Right. So those two things together equal the public safety risk. So we'll get into the whole thing. Let's bring Dawn.
Now we'll bring you in, Dawn.
Now we'll bring Dawn.
I will just mention, I first met Dawn, I think it was during the Freedom to Read
Right.
bills that we were working on back in fall of 2024. So let's bring her out of the green room. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Dawn.
Hey, how are you?
We talk a lot about everything going on in Jersey, but we really don't know all that much about your background. If you could give us a quick take and your general experience in the assembly to date.
Sure. Thanks again for having me on. I live in Sussex County in Franklin Borough. I started out as a borough councilwoman. Even prior to that, I served on zoning board and served on the economic development committee. After serving 3 years in Franklin, I became a Sussex County freeholder, which, the name has changed to commissioner, and I served 5 years on the Sussex County Commissioner Board. And then in 2023 was elected to serve in District 24 as an assemblywoman. We had retirements coming from our district. The great Hal Worths left the assembly, our predecessor. He was a former labor commissioner under Chris Christie, and he was an assemblyman, wonderful, strong conservative. Assemblyman Parker Space ended up filling the seat of Senator Steve Oraho, who had retired, and Assemblyman Mike Ganamort rounds out the 24th legislative district. He's from the Morris County part of the district, but he's a Sussex County boy at heart. He grew up there. So also separate from political activity, I'm a school administrator. I'm in New Jersey public education for the past 20 years. I've been an English teacher, a vice principal at a high school, a middle school principal, and now I'm a district administrator. And what I do is I work with students in English and math to help learning loss remediation following COVID and the lockdowns, because we know we had very draconian lockdowns here in the state of New Jersey, compliments of our former governor, Phil Murphy. Did a lot of academic damage, did a lot of psychological damage to children, and there's a lot of catching up to do. So now my job is to coordinate these academic enrichment programs for these children who are 2 or more grade levels behind. And I also coordinate the state assessments for a multitude of public charter schools. So that's what I do. And I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to talk about the topics tonight. It looks like you have a full schedule here.
We do.
Just 2 comments there. Actually, for about 13 years, I was a geometry teacher at Cinnaminson High School District a long time ago. But there's nothing like teaching geometry 8th period on a Friday. It's just a beautiful thing.
They love it. They love it.
And by the way, I worked with curriculum development in textbook development with at K through 12 and college curricula. So we have all in this room had a lot of experience with curriculum development and topics that are there, should not be there, and everything that goes with it.
Right. So there are probably a lot of people in this area that really couldn't put their finger on Sussex County. But I mentioned this to Constance last week, that in Sussex County, I think is one of the most beautiful spots in the entire state, if not, I'd say in the top 100 in the country. And that is the Delaware Water Gap. That is Sussex, right?
Yep, we're right along there. And if you're trying to figure out where Sussex County is, imagine the very, very top of the state, where it comes to the point where we have Pennsylvania, New York State, and High Point State Park. So the High Point State Monument, that is Sussex.
And Port Jervis is just on the New York side? Is that
correct?
Okay,
correct.
Gotcha. So let's take a look at these 4 bills. The first one, again, you add up these 4 bills, you've got Sanctuary State in New Jersey. The first one, these are all titled by Democrats. And the first one is the Privacy Protection Act. And this one has serious consequences on how the local police and the federal communicate with each other, right? So maybe you can tell us about this. What do you think some of the ramifications would be as this gets enacted?
Sure. Well, last session we started out with a trifecta of terrible bills, and they've added on a 4th, as you know, in this time around. But for this particular bill, this one is specifically egregious. It actually blocks the sharing of information between law enforcement agencies by way of any information collected, even via license plate readers. You may have heard a lot in the news talking about license plate readers, and oftentimes it's very important, critical information when tracking criminals who are trafficking victims across different state borders. And this will actually restrict the sharing of that information. It really, the impetus of this bill, and it's not hard. I mean, it's as transparent, as your windshield.
Right.
This is basically meant to block any information sharing with the federal government about immigration status of those who are illegally receiving SNAP benefits, Medicaid, things of that nature. And New Jersey has a rich history of incredibly mismanaging and bungling those federal funds, significant overpayments, as much as 34% payment error rate. And New Jersey is not at all being transparent with how we are distributing our federal funds for those programs. So what happens here is the legislature tries to put a Band-Aid. The Democrats try to put a Band-Aid on it, but in that process ends up making the situation more dangerous and difficult for all of us, because I say all of these bills create what I call unintended shrapnel. I can't imagine that it's intentional shrapnel that they would not want to catch a human trafficker, but their desire to protect illegal criminal migrants outweighs any other priority that they may have. So that's why we get bills like this that restrict the sharing of what they deem sensitive information with law enforcement.
Right. So we have just spent the last decade uh, upgrading systems between municipal police and the federal just to get over this gap here, because this was, of course, the number one criticism after 9/11 is that the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing from a law enforcement standpoint. So I know there was a great focus on the communication, and I think we were tremendously successful in tracking down perpetrators because of the sharing of data. This puts us back into the pre-9/11 days. This is really detrimental and
Regression.
it is regression. Again, it's a public safety risk. There's also a piece in there about communicating within 90 days. Isn't there a piece of that, Dawn, where they have to contact the individual?
That's right. If that information is requested from the state, we actually have to notify that individual. So a criminal or an illegal migrant that's here, if their information is requested, law enforcement actually has to notify them to say, "Hey,
Amazing.
your information is being requested, and we're going to give you like a little bit of time so you can figure out what you want to do to continue to evade." Dealing with the
That's so
consequences.
appalling.
So it's
Yeah. So the whole concept of
it's real.
yeah, the concept of surprise is gone because
Gone.
the person notified. Obviously, he's out of town as soon as he gets that. So that's that one. The next one here is the Safe Communities Act.
Any comments on that in particular?
This one's a doozy too.
Oh, I certainly do. The Safe Communities Act, and I spoke about this on the floor at length. It's meant to create these safe spaces, these off-limit spaces that includes hospitals, churches, shelters, schools, where ICE will allegedly be prohibited from entering for enforcement purposes. And my point was, a lot of those places are where victims go for shelter or for their own sanctuary. So victims go to shelters, victims go to hospitals, victims seek refuge in churches, right? And those types of environments. And now we, in essence, are telling criminals, oh no, you can go there and you will receive sanctuary because we're going to protect you there. So we are actually shoving criminal migrants into the same spaces where their victims traditionally go to find their own safe space. And that's what that bill is.
Tragic.
It's a building a safe harbor, for illegal aliens.
Correct.
I know the schools aren't normally where ICE would operate. However, that is where MS-13 will operate. You will have MS-13 members that are 16 years old, 17 years old that will be in these schools. And it might be necessary because some of these people are rapists and murderers of the worst type. We know there have been incidences where, they have lured kids into the woods, they've shot them, they've just done awful things, murdered them. And these are all teenagers. And these are kids that will be in these schools with our own children, with our kids. But they will get safe haven there. So that's the Safe Communities Act.
The no face mask.
Right. So there's the facial identity one, and this is this is probably the funniest one of all.
This one is beyond ridiculous simply because it violates the supremacy clause. We do not regulate, as state legislators, we do not regulate federal operations for what they wear, how they operate, how they conduct business. We have no control over that. We pass laws that control state government. We are not congresswomen and congressmen. That is not our function. And every time a state, and we just saw what happened in California, every time a state tries to posture and pretend as if they have control over this, they lose in court. And the amount of money, of taxpayer dollars that are lost every time for the big show, for the big performance, as if we have any control over this, is absolutely unbelievable. And in the meantime, what we are doing is we're actually causing havoc amongst our own law enforcement because they have a bunch of carve outs in the bill. Well, if you're undercover, if you're here, if you're there, and they know the state legislators that wrote this bill know it's wrong, know it's dangerous, know it's problematic. And it was a big show to pretend for their supporters as if they're doing something when, quite frankly, they can't do anything. There's nothing that a state legislator can do to regulate how the federal government chooses to equip their federal officers conducting federal operations. It's as simple as can be. It's cut and dry. A small child could understand that. Unfortunately, members of our own legislature cannot.
And that was the subject of your clip that you first opened up with, right? That was
Correct.
the subject, and that is exactly what's
No,
now happening in
Yes.
Camden County. They're ready to do the same thing and move forward just like that here.
Yeah, actually, the way they
We're
work.
so calm. And
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say the.
We were so calm at the start, but the bills, they just, we went on and saying in all different kinds of ways, my colleagues and I, and we just explained over and over. And then finally, it just got to a breaking point. We said, this is absolutely ridiculous. You understand, and this is willful ignorance at this point.
Right. So I remember during the testimony, I think the head of the Chief of Police Association came in and argued for amendments. Anyway, we know the intent, the singular intent was to get ICE to take their mask off. But the way it was written, it doesn't say ICE per se. I think it says, actually just refers to a law enforcement officer. Well, that brings in state police, it brings in municipal police, which I don't think anybody's ever complained about them with their masks. So, this is just a bad bill because the intent was strictly about ICE, but the way it was written, it unintended consequences again. It affect the state police and the local police. So, but it was passed.
That's
right?
correct.
So. The last one here is the umbrella one, strengthening trust between law enforcement and immigrant communities. So this is the Immigrant Trust Directive that
Correct.
actually was in place, I guess, in 2018. I don't know if there were changes from the directive to the bill. This says what, essentially?
By way of the Immigrant Trust Directive, back in 2018, it was at that time Attorney General Gerberg Rual. He instituted this, and in the county I'm from Sussex, I was a freeholder at the time, and we pushed back against it. So we had really strong knowledge of what this was and what it did and the dangers of it. The irony of this bill is that it literally blocks communication between federal law enforcement and your local law enforcement. And it sets some very, very dangerous time limits. So for instance, if you have a criminal migrant who is arrested for suspicion of committing a heinous crime, there's a certain time frame. And if ICE cannot respond and retrieve that individual, let's say by midnight of that day, then we can that individual, if they so choose, to release them without notification to federal agents. That is incredibly problematic, especially when you pair that with our bail reform policies, which have been, with cashless bail, have been incredibly light. You have a repeat offender, and take a county like Sussex, for instance, where we are really is far, far northwest. And if they are, occupied dealing with other cases with other individuals and offenders, they may not make it to that, up to that destination at that time. It's also incredibly problematic because it's supposed to engender their claim is that it engenders trust so that those who are almost like a safe harbor. So those who might be victims and are here illegally know that they could come forward and speak without fear of them being deported, very similar to a lot of our laws that involve, illegal substances and safe haven for babies, when you leave, a child at a police station or something along those lines, where we're more concerned about the safety end of it. But that's not at all what this does. That's not at all what this does. This, in fact, creates nothing but havoc, and it prevents our local law enforcement who are doing the apprehension from holding them and getting those individuals out of the community. So what we are doing is we are indeed shoving those offenders back into the community to reoffend against the exact same community that they just violated. And where is the compassion for those who are not even United States nationals? We have women, we have children being trafficked or were trafficked under the Biden regime across the border, human trafficked across the border for all kinds of horrible reasons. Where is their protection? Where's the compassion? A wide open border and giving carte blanche and releasing, catch and release. How does that protect those women and children who were trafficked into the United States, who has lax policies now for anti-immigration enforcement?
Right.
Anti-illegal immigration enforcement, might I add.
I found it appalling when they did the roll call in assembly that several examples were brought up of various criminals that came through, and the stone-faced Democrat opposition was just totally unmoved. And at one point I wanted to say, okay, if you're not moved by the harm being done to our people, are you maybe moved the harm it's doing to the pocketbook? And because the numbers on this are staggering. We've all looked at this report a couple of times. We're looking at $7.3 billion in costs and services. We're looking at $1,600 per taxpayer. And, not even that seems to faze them. If you don't want to be worried about the human cost, what about the cost from your pocketbook? Again, nothing. I found it very interesting in a town hall, again in Camden County. This is very recent, where Donald Norcross, running for Congress, was there, and he was there with our assemblyman. And people always stand up and complain about property taxes. Of course. Of course. And boy, I was chomping at the bit to say where some of that's coming from. And their answer was, well, that's a very good point. You need to bring that up at your local municipal meeting. It's like, shove it down the road. We're not going to talk about it. That was his answer. Not even the cost is yeah.
They don't care. It's not the cost. I mean,
yeah,
Constance, it's why would there be concern when it's with someone else's money, right? That's not a concern, right? And as far as what could get through, what if I told you the main bill sponsor, right, is in the District 37, where a little girl has a fractured skull. There is a illegal immigrant here with a long and rich criminal history of assault, of throwing rocks at people and assaulting police officers and civilians. He hurls a rock at a school bus, fractures a little girl's skull, 8 years old, right? And we want to protect him. We want to protect him. We want to give him safe harbor and safe haven. Now, what about this little girl? So imagine this crime happens in your own district, and you are the one yelling for all kinds of, allowances.
Very peculiar.
Very peculiar. You can't make this up. You can't make it up.
Yeah, let me just mention about the human toll here. Since the Immigrant Trust Directive, and the thing about these laws and the fact that New Jersey now is a sanctuary state, we know what's going to happen because there's a history. This essentially has been in effect since 2018. Now, in 2019 in Jersey City, there was a murder and aggravated sexual assault. The victim was Carolina Cano. Her body disappeared while jogging in Lincoln Park. Her body was found in a lake in the park. George Rios was charged with kidnapping, aggravated sexual assault. ICE reported the defendant was in the United States illegally and had previously been deported twice. Also in Jersey City, 2025, there was a triple murder. This is a young mother, a young boy, 5 years old, and a little girl, 9 years old. They were stabbed to death. This person was in the United States unlawfully. Monmouth County in the Red Bank area was the vehicular homicide. This just happened last August. This is where the illegal alien was drunk, across the medial strip, and I believe killed both the mother and the 11-year-old daughter. Yeah, there's a list of other criminals that we've picked up, all from all countries and all over the state here. Just very quickly, from Portugal, we have the crime was enticement of a minor for indecent purposes in Newark, New Jersey. Cape May, New Jersey, another person from Mexico, sex assault, sex offense against a child, fondling, sexual exploitation of a minor. That was in Cape May. In Belvedere, in Princeton, in Newark, in Patterson, Bloomingfield, Newark, all over the state. So if people think it can't happen here, it's Kearney, New Jersey, and they're all the same. Sex assault against children, Bridgeton, Leesburg, Newark, Belvedere, Jackson. This is happening, and it's just going to get worse because now this has been codified. So I don't know what to say, but you know, the thing about this, that all these bills, none of them were they were only sponsored by Democrats. They were passed by Democrats. Not one Republican sponsored. There are no Republican fingerprints on any of these bills. It did not get one vote. So the problem is there's just more Democrats than there are Republicans. So that's where we are in New Jersey.
Correct. And, you know, they characterize the biggest problem here is any time that you speak against any of this, they conflate immigration with illegal immigration. When you talk
Right.
about the dangers like you just outlined, what they do is they talk about immigrants and they say, but we're a welcoming country and it's your neighbors. Don't you care about your neighbors? You know, and I said, Mr. Rogers did not throw the rock and fracture the girl's skull. That's not your neighbor. That's not what's happening in your neighborhood. Cut it out. You know, until we can have an honest conversation and they can insert the word criminal migrant against those who commit violent crimes, that we can talk about illegal migrant for those who are here illegally, we cannot have an honest conversation. They refuse to name exactly what the problem is. They feel like it's insulated by accusations of racist, calling things a dog whistle. They don't want us to define things as they are in reality. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, the legal immigrants, nobody has a beef with whatsoever.
None. Zero.
It wasn't.
I know plenty of legal immigrants in New York City, plenty of friends legally here, and they are very put out. As they came in illegally, rightfully so, they respect the country, and they are beside themselves that this is happening. So,
Was there an amendment that the Republicans put out there to put the adjective illegal in front of immigrant, or in other words, to change the bill? Any reference to an immigrant, they would put, you know, the correct adjective there, either illegal or legal?
Absolutely not, because I mean, anything like that is entirely dead in the water. I do know that Assemblyman and my friend Assemblyman Paul Kinitra did try to introduce some hostile amendments, you know, along the way. He even suggested, you know, at one point, can we change it and let's have a circumstance where if we move
For accuracy,
this forward, you all agree to house, you know, you agree to house somebody here. And of course, everything gets balked at every time we do a hostile amendment on the floor. Every time we point out the ludicrousness or we point out a logical fix to something, you know, it goes nowhere. They just table it.
Yeah, I would just implore voters to remember that list and the people that have been killed and the children that have had their innocence just violently ripped away from them. Next time you go into the voters booth, you got to vote the right way, or you know, at some point there's going to be no turning the state around. It's just going to get worse. So why don't we talk?
we got to switch topics. We've been on this a half hour. We're going to lose.
We could talk all night on this. So let's go to the dancer. Let's switch topics and talk about public education and
funding.
Yeah.
Next is your birthday. Let's go. Come on. Oh, yes. Come on.
This is all over the internet.
What was that? It's inexplainable. What was that?
Well, what that is that's footage of Newark Superintendent. I call him Newark Superintendent Surf and Turf for his, penchant for the rich things in life. That's Newark Superintendent Roger Leone, Superintendent of Schools. That was footage that was posted, not by us initially, celebrating a birthday that he just recently had. And might I first say that everyone's entitled to celebrate their birthday, and I
Sure.
said he's got the moves like Jagger, that guy, right? I mean, good for him. He looked like he was having a good time. The problem is what's happening in Newark right now in Newark Public Schools is not a good time. It's not a good time for the children. It's not a good time for the families, and it's not a good time for the taxpayers. So as much as that was silly and ridiculous and tongue in cheek, it is just a stark reminder of the excess that's happening in Newark Public Schools.
Yeah. So, what's happening with Linda McMahon in Washington, and what is that all about?
Well, what's come to our attention is Newark for many years, for a number of years, as you're aware, was under state control due to gross mismanagement of funds, whether it be building funds, right, working with the School Development Authority, whether it came to, as a matter of fact, when the offices of the Newark Board of Education were raided back, amidst the first takeover, there were board members actually that were not even in the country, that were on, trips out of the country. And the irony is everything comes full circle, because what
Right.
we are finding is that Newark Public Schools receives the largest amount of statewide school funding of any district in the entire state. And even, child for child rivals the country for the amount of sustained funding that goes to them. $1.3 billion of statewide
Right.
taxpayer dollars. And what we are seeing is something horrendous. We see that they are spending money on things that have little to nothing to do with education, sending large groups of adults, administrators, board members to all of these balmy vacations, right? We have Palm Springs. We have, they went to somewhere out in California. They went to Puerto Rico. They went to Honolulu. They sent
That is unbelievable.
5 women out for a women's empowerment summit in Las Vegas. So again, it begs the question, what is this doing to help your children? They had to pay back some money due to a superintendent fund day for their
Right.
central office
was gonna
staff,
ask.
right? That was, tens of thousands of dollars for, fancy food. Open bar was originally reported. They're refuting that. And then we have the no bid contracts. We have where
Right.
they would like to spend $500,000 on a school building to lease it for a 30-year lease that they would have to buy at the end. We have where they outbid a public charter school, very successful Newark public charter school, by $7 million above market value when they didn't need that building whatsoever. It was in an area of the city where it was staff 1 to 7 students. They had a ton of open seats, and still they paid that, and they colluded with the School Development Authority to block that. They spend our money like a drunken sailor, with a credit card that's stumbling about, and there's no tomorrow. And that is not their sole money to spend. That money is
It is not.
supposed to go to the children of Newark. But where it gets dicey and what it has to do with Linda McMahon or what it has to do with the federal government is this. Their school was allotted, the Newark School District, the largest amount of COVID relief dollars, $287 million for learning loss remediation. It was for mental health support, and it was for air quality projects, things of that nature.
Right.
Newark did not know what to do with that money, quite frankly, when it came. And the way they started portioning it out, every school had to list what they were going to do with those funds and submit a plan to the state. So on paper, they submitted their plan, but in reality, what actually happened was quite different. Some of the legislators from Newark have touted, well, we did great. We passed an audit, a 2023 audit. Well, in 2025, when all of the work should have been completed, the circle came around, but it never connected because only 12% of the students that were supposed to receive tutoring received tutoring. There was a consultant who was hired at $1.4 million for a 2-year contract to help train the teachers in literacy strategies, a ridiculous amount for this person who was woefully unqualified as per public records, never even started the work. And they will not account for where all of those dollars went when they didn't go to the children of Newark. And I take clear offense to this. People say to me, oh, we feel like you're picking on Newark. Like hell, I'm picking on Newark. I'm focusing on Newark for 2 reasons. One, the whole state is suffering, paying for Newark schools to waste our money, for adults to take money meant for children and waste it. And secondarily, because of what I do for a living, and I've worked in urban schools for the past 18 years, I see what it takes. And I quite frankly have busted my tail to help children be the best they could possibly be, along with wonderful staff I've worked alongside. And to see people take money that's meant for this population and spend it on trips and parties and $250,000 on balloon decorations, it's disgusting. So we brought it to the attention of Linda McMahon, the State Department of Education. We also brought it to some state agencies as well. What I can say at this point is we have had a conversation with one of those agencies already and an interview, and we're going to see where it goes from there. And that's all I can share at this point. But we are hopeful that this moves along because there needs to be accountability with our federal dollars, and there needs to be accountability for those kids, because if they're not going to look out for them, the legislature, it's our duty to look out for them.
Yeah. And not to mention our state dollars, of course. Now, all of this would be fine. All of this would be somewhat acceptable, if you want to put it that way, if the student outcomes were better. But they're sending these kids back to failing schools every year. The way I understand is 21% graduated proficient in math, only 21%, and only 34% proficient in English language arts. And these are by New Jersey's own assessments. So it's not like they're coming out on the end. This money is not making the result, which I thought was to get them a better education so they come out ready to graduate and obtain jobs.
Well,
which
you
all
both
goes
are
back
in education. You both have experience in education. So, oftentimes we put so much stock in the inputs, right? What are adults doing? Trenton thinks it's the input. We just need to throw more money at it, right? That's the answer. Let's just put more money into it. But when the student outcomes aren't reflecting that, and don't get me wrong, students who are at risk, who are economically disadvantaged, tend to require more support. That's why this money is allocated there to begin with. It is shocking that the money never makes it to the teachers, to the classroom, to the students. How do we expect the results to even improve marginally? We're not looking for, a home run out of every school in every urban district, in any district in the state. But what we are looking for is measurable growth and proof that money is going where it's supposed to be going. And it's not. It's not.
And I think people need to understand, because they don't know what this amount of money means till you compare it with the rest of the state. We have like 590 school districts, right? In this big scheme, there are like 150 school districts who are getting less than last year. There are 10 schools that are getting 7% of the entire New Jersey budget. So the balance is wacko. And then how that plays out is also redundant from last year. Some of these same schools had problems last year. Toms River, they lost significant state aid, $175 million. Cherry Hill lost big number. I'll get to that in a second. They're going to cut the sports program at Montclair for freshman sports. So that number alone, it's disturbing enough to talk about Newark. But what's really concerning is that this is at the risk of what's happening with our other schools.
Right. So that's Newark. And frankly, something sounds illegal going on there. That's all I can say. And I mean, to me, I don't know what the requirements are to be managed again by the state, and I'm not so sure that's a good thing. I guess it's
Yeah.
better that they're managed by the state, but they're blowing it basically. They're really. But as you mentioned, while they're spending the money, other districts are struggling.
Mhm.
So let's focus on
Bring up that image, Mr. Producer.
yeah, and then we're going to talk about some of these districts because a lot of districts are in a nosedive. I don't know how they're going to pull out of it.
So I'm taking a stroll down the street in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and I pick up one of these, the Cherry Hill Sun, which is thrown on the driveway, and I pick it up and I open it up, and it's April 1st. And no joke, they're telling us again that the school budgets are going to raise taxes. Now, this happened same time last year. So this is a good case study in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. This township, which is rather large in Camden County, they're going to have a 7.4% tax increase and 14.5 million in budget cuts. That includes 72 staff position, 72 being cut.
Right.
That is no small number. And on top of it, 8 million outside of personnel. They don't know where it's coming from yet, but 8 million outside of personnel. So they don't know where that's coming from. They say some of this is costs in operation, like in utilities. Now, we know we can go down the street with utilities too, about why utilities cost higher, but we'll save that for another day. But just alone, what Cherry Hill's dealing with, it's very significant of other townships. Others around where we live, Audubon, 2%, Collingswood lost 2%. Then the numbers go on and on and on about how much they lost, and they're going to be cutting teachers, they're going to be cutting staff. And I saw it again on a Facebook page today, upset about teachers being cut in Collingwood. These are smaller districts, of course, but this big pie, what is it with the school funding formula?
Right. And I take this personally because I live in Cherry Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my kids are out of the school district, and they, on one hand, they're doing Stay New Jersey to keep me in, New Jersey. And then on the other hand, they're jacking up the school prices.
Can you comment on that formula?
Absolutely. And Jack, if you ever want to talk Stay NJ, that's for another show because I could talk to you for half an hour about that debacle as well. However, New Jersey school funding formula, SFRA, and then S2 was brought in to kind of try to mitigate that. But, all roads lead back to what's called the Abbott decision. And the Abbott decision said, that we needed to take into consideration a school district's ability to pay within its own community, right, for a fair, equitable education, right, adequate education for the children. So that is settled law. That's not changing. That's not going anywhere. But here's the rub. The way we fund is so unbelievably dysfunctional. A lot of people say, the school funding formula is so complicated. You need an advanced degree to understand it. But when you really break it down to the most basic components, it's not voodoo. Every child in the state of New Jersey starts out with a base number of what their quote unquote monetary cost would be per district. Okay. So every kid starts at 1. Then if they're in middle school, that's a bit more to educate. So that child counts as 1.04 of one child. Then at high school, they count as 1.16 in the weighted formula because high school is more expensive. The materials that you would need, the sophistication of the education of the teachers you might need, etc. But then this is when you get into English language learner, you may add 0.4 to that. And then for a student who, for instance, is special education, you add 0.4 also to that, and so on and so forth. So it builds up the value, per se, of what each kid would cost. So that's the basic premise of it. But then what the state does is probably the stupidest thing that we could ever imagine. They say, okay, this is how much it costs to educate a child, the children in your district. Then we're going to look at 2 things in your community. We're going to look at how much you make, your income, the income of the community itself, of the town, right? And then we're going to look at your property values, your property valuation in that town and how much you could raise. And they're going to each count for 50% of how much we think you can afford to pay, right? So you have what each child is allotted, then you have what your town can give, and the gap in between is what the state will fund. So you have, districts that are definitely impoverished districts, right? Who can pay less. Then you have more wealthy districts who, for instance, can pay more. But the problem is when they're determining what the wealth or worth is, I think about my parents when they bought their home, what it was worth when they bought their home in, 1982, what that was worth and what their value of their home, which is a modest bi-level home in Sussex County now, but it is 4 to 5 times the value, 5 times maybe more of what they had paid for it at
Right.
that time. My parents have long been retired and they're on fixed income and whatnot. But to the eyes of the county, oh boy, they must be rolling in it, right? Because look at the value of that property. So there's a big danger in using property valuations and not the actual income of your property when you're determining what the local fair share is that your community can pay. So what we are seeing is these giant, giant gaps where you might not be getting a thing back from the state in that, filling the aid in the middle. That
Right.
equalization
Isn't this-
aid. You might not
this
be
is
getting anything.
It's redistribution of wealth.
Correct. It is
Classic redistribution of wealth. Mhm.
Yes, understood, because constitutionally in the state of New Jersey, every child is guaranteed. Like what we did find, and what I must say is that the fair piece is if a public education, an adequate free public education is constitutionally protected, we do have a duty of providing safe, fair, equitable education across the board. The problem is that this plan is absolutely insane, which leads me to the next piece of it. We do something incredibly stupid. Special education funding. We say, you know what? We don't want to know how many kids are actually enrolled. Every district, we're going to say 15.9% of your population, real number. Every
Right.
single school gets 15.9%. So if you have a higher special ed population, a lower special ed population, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We're just going to give you that same blanket thing. Now, this past year, the legislature put a Band-Aid on it, and we wrote something that said, no, you are going to use real special education numbers for the districts. And that helped a lot for some school districts. But this is the kind of like short-sighted nonsense that goes on. And I don't know if you want to add anything before I get into the Highlands and the Pinelands, because that's another big issue.
Right.
I think we are going to have to wrap this topic up soon. I did want to ask, because it's a little bit more germane, why the medical costs are going up so much. What's the deal there?
Oh, yeah. Well, for costs, we have a huge crisis. The state health benefits plan, which a large portion of New Jersey public schools and even state workers, obviously, are on the state health benefit plan. And the problem is it's twofold. One is that employees, let's say in a school, with Chapter 78, contribute a portion of their salary, a percentage of their salary. So as health insurance costs spike wildly up, they are not adjusted to what let's say a private employer, what that percentage that would belong to the employee would be. It's pretty much fixed and it's linked to income. The actual salary of that employee. Also, we have what's called, Cadillac benefits per se. I mean, I've never been on the state health benefits plan myself. Any school districts that I have worked for did not participate, had alternate, more affordable plans, just because it didn't make sense, quite frankly, to be on the state health benefit plan. But what we find is what they call the Cadillac of benefits, right? So perhaps prescription drug costs are significantly lower for generics or specialty drugs. I know that the state, they had a vote to cover, some of the GLP-1 drugs that are coming out now are now covered, where in private, employers, they're not. So that's problematic. Where your deductible is, they may have, a low deductible before the plan starts paying out. So again, they have very, very gold standard, or like they call Cadillac level of benefits. And it's very hard to get rid of that, because oftentimes that state health benefit plan with those level of benefits are written into their contract negotiations as they negotiate their contracts, via the NJEA or their local education agency. So it just can't be wiped, while employees are under contract. But there must be, there has to be. The system is collapsing under its own weight,
Right.
absolutely collapsing under its own weight. And without a change to it, it's simply not sustainable. It's not possible, because where those costs are landing is on, us. It's landing on Joe Carpenter or,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
this is where it's landing. And the people, the general populace, are now paying to subsidize Cadillac benefits for employees on the state health benefit plan.
Oh my gosh. We're going to have to take a break now. And we'll pick up where we can and finish up. We're going to take a break now, Mr. Producer.
America's Pulse Network. The mainstream media is bought and paid for. The truth is twisted to fit their agenda. But America is waking up. Because podcasts are the future for trusted media. Welcome to the America's Pulse Network. It is a network built by patriots that upholds the Constitution. But America's Pulse Network stands for God, truth, and the America First movement. There is no corporate propaganda, no government spin, just real news, real talk, and real voices fighting for faith, freedom, and the future of this great nation with common sense. Here are some of America's Pulse Network podcasts. Alexandra Levine Live, hosted by Alexandra Levine. Jersey Shore Podcast, hosted by Damon Galdo. The Conservative Corner, hosted by Seth Eisenberg. The New Jersey Statehouse Watch, hosted by Jack Brangan and Constance Ditzel. APN's The Pulse is moderated by either Alexandra, Damon, Elena, or Seth. Also tune into America's Pulse Network on the following social media platforms: Join the revolution, because the pulse of America beats for God and country. America's Pulse Network is for faith, family, freedom, and truth.
Hello again. Dawn, we're going to wrap up now because we had such a scintillating discussion that we're going to have you back. If you'll come back, we would like to talk more about freedom to read and some other things. And we thank you so much for coming. Both of these are hot topics people need to know. Thank you so much.
We could talk all night about them, and the lights go off here in 5 minutes. So,
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
okay, Dawn.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you again. So we do have some episodes coming up. So, Mr. Producer, we have put up on the screen. So coming up, we have another Assembly woman, Vicki Flynn. She will be here on May 12th. So that's right around the corner. Another fighter that's right there with Dawn. Both Vicki is there as well. But Brian Bergen is coming up. He's another tough one. Once he gets up, I know the Democrats hate to see
All
him.
these people are working for us in Assembly. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Chris Russell is on June 9th. He is he had worked for the Jack Ciattarelli campaign, and I just want to know what happened, from him. That's it. Now, the last one so far is Audrey Lane. Now, Audrey Lane is one of the preeminent, I would say, experts, and there are many. But she is certainly one of them as far as the New Jersey budget is concerned. So we talked a lot about money tonight with school formula. She will have an opinion about that, and maybe she might have a way. I would like to get from her, what is the road out of this mess, not only with the school budget or the school formula, but the New Jersey budget in general. So mark your calendars. May 12th is the next one, Vicki, and I think we're going to talk to her about the voter bill.
Bill's up there. So anyway, that's it. NewJerseyStateHouseWatch.com. You can find us on YouTube. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are on social media, New Jersey Statehouse Watch. We are on X, New Jersey Statehouse, because they couldn't take the extra characters.
That's right.
So you can find us quite readily. This is live stream or recorded tonight, and the podcasts are always downloadable after the fact.
So good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the New Jersey Statehouse Watch. Join Jack Brangan and Constance Ditzel every second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 7:30 p.m. Watch the show live at njstatehousewatch.com or listen anytime. Download the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time on the New Jersey Statehouse Watch.